So are you ready for the first question?
Yes.
All right, so the question is, how can businesses and county government work together to reduce the panhandling challenge facing our community?
Thank you so much for that question. I appreciate it. I believe that people panhandle out of desperation, and we have got to create a path to them from where they currently are to their next step in life. I don't think you should be homeless in Escambia County. I think it's a result of something terrible that happened to you, and as a community, we have to rally around those people. But we have to make that a clear path. We need a low barrier shelter for these people to go to. That's going to be really expensive for the county to fit. So we can work on private-public partnerships. We can work on funding together. We can work on partnering with nonprofits. There is a lot of room for us to partner with the community to make a safe place for our homeless to go and get to the next step in life. So once you do the low barrier shelter, they can move to housing where it's multiple people per unit, and then once that happens, they can move into tiny homes. We've got to work on planning and zoning so we can create these places and make sure they're in locations that are safe for our community. But we have just over 1,100 homeless people in Escambia County right now. That's a huge amount for our population. The chronically homeless person in the county costs about $31,000 a year in taxpayer dollars. So if we look at what we're actually spending on the problem, we could really create a solution. So I think it's diving into the numbers, identifying what we need, and moving forward with a plan to take them from being homeless to being independent.
All right. Well, cities and counties all across the state are going to have to do something after the legislation got signed by Governor DeSantis, where it's going to be illegal to camp or sleep on public property or in parks or sidewalks, whatever it may be. But counties and cities have to have somewhere to take these individuals to. So a low barrier shelter is certainly one of those options that has some wraparound services in it with some workforce development, mental health, or drug addiction recovery. And there's a part of me that obviously feels bad for the individuals that are out on the street panhandling and are homeless and have ended up on hard times. And the other side is, how do I weigh that with the fact that, is it the responsibility of the Escambia County taxpayer to foot the bill to fix the problem? We do have reports of other cities and states that are sending homeless individuals here, whether that from not this area, they come and drop them off. We have had reports of that here in the city, and we've seen that in the downtown area. And I've been hearing about this problem for 3.5 years that I've been with the Downtown Improvement Board. One thing that the city passed and the county has this in place too is that panhandlers aren't legally allowed to take anything from a moving vehicle that's in traffic, or even if they're sitting at a stoplight. And so we've seen that help initially downtown, but we've seen another wave of individuals come downtown that are asking for a handout on the sidewalk. The county needs to invest in a low barrier shelter, again, with mental services included into that project, and alcohol and drug addiction recovery as well, so we can help tackle this problem at the root.
Well, I'm a first impression guy, and when you come off the interstate as a tourist or a guest to our town, and the first thing you see is Blythe and panhandling and homelessness, it certainly doesn't make me feel safe, and certainly isn't helping our economic development, which are the two most important things: making sure our citizens are safe and feel like they belong. So what do we do about that? First of all, well, we work on the details. Not everybody who panhandles is homeless. Some of them make a lot of money standing out on the corner with not having a job. Certainly, it's a small percentage of them. Most of them, need that extra money to get to the next day, to get food. And our services around town, we have a lot of great organizations that we should be able to push these people to and make sure that we are taking care of them. Also enforcement, making sure that that we give the sheriff department the tools and back on when they have to make a decision. It's not good on the sidewalk, and it's certainly good for our development here in Escambia County. We are a compassionate town. We give back. I personally do more charity events than most people for the last 35 years. And I know that this town has a heart, and we certainly want to look out after anybody who is in need. And certainly if you drive around Beggs Lane or any of the other areas in town, you know that there is a need. But there has to be safety. People standing in the middle of the streets, it's not safe. You know, they're walking out in the middle of the street, sleeping on the sidewalk, not safe. So we need to get them in the right services, and we need to make sure that we are compassionate in taking care of them.
Well, he must have read a little bit of my notes. Panhandling and homelessness is a huge eyesore in our town. I have great compassion for people in time of struggle. I'm a business owner. It has been more times than I can count that we've had someone on our front porch or side porch overdosed and in need of help. But you got to be careful. We're not professionals as business owners of dealing with people who have overdosed. So we call for help. I'm thankful to the Sheriff's Department and Chip Simmons for always making sure somebody's there when we need them, to help get them to the next step of where they need to be. Sometimes that means give them Narcan to bring them back to life that's left in them. Sometimes it's take them to the hospital. And sometimes it's just picking them up and telling them they've got to be on their way. That's one way of holding them accountable. Homeless people in this town can tell you where every good place to eat is located. Every place. And just because meals are free doesn't mean they aren't good to eat. But I tell you what, there's a huge difference. I will give compassion to a homeless person until they can pick themselves up with help. But panhandling, it is ridiculous. I think that more people panhandle in this town than there are homeless people. I wish I made nearly half of the money that they made because they're in the same place for this shift, they're in another place the next shift. They know what they're doing. I think we have a responsibility. I love the low barrier shelter time and I think it's really important that we start and get them to the next step in their life, and hopefully they'll make progress from there.
Ma'am, will you please reread the question?
How can businesses and county government work together to reduce the panhandling challenge facing our community?
Thanks. I just had to go way off my notes because it was nowhere near that. So business owners take the chance to start a business and they're paying the taxes, and I get it, it's a public sidewalk and the legalities of the panhandling legal on the sidewalk. But if the business owner is having an issue with their patrons coming in to go to their store to pay those, so they can pay their taxes and they can pay the fees to have that business, and they have an issue with it and they call respective law enforcement, he's sitting right here, then there should be a response there. And if it's a problem, they should get backup from the county or from the officials that they need it from. However, we're treating a symptom with the panhandling, I think. And if we keep attacking it, and my 1 minute answer, anybody's 1 minute answer is not going to solve this issue, because if it did, we wouldn't be facing it around the country. So treating a symptom is like taking NyQuil. We're just going to go to sleep with it. So attacking the homeless, getting to the root of it, to the homeless problem, I think Ashley said it best with partnerships. Identifying why someone is homeless. If they fell on bad luck and they need a helping hand, let's help them. If they have a mental instability, let's create a partnership and get them some mental treatment. If they're a criminal element, let's work with law enforcement, create that partnership, and let's get them where they not here. Let's get them where they need to be. And then identify the ones that just want to be what's so-called free. They don't deserve any of it. Honestly, they're not putting in. They just want to be left alone. Let's leave them alone. That's all I have.
Well, we do have a significant issue in Escambia County. It's one of the calls that I get on a very frequent basis. The good news is the county currently has resources, and we're putting those into place. I'll tell you about $30,000 that we've earmarked, 9,000 of which that we've spent, that's saved $1 million. It's called Project Real Change Reconnect. What we do is we utilize a faith-based organization. We have them engage with these homeless individuals and find out where they're from, what kind of support system they might have there, and then we make contact with that person, and then we send them back. We've done that with dozens of homeless individuals, and they do drain our social service systems, and so far we've saved the equivalent of $1 million doing that. The other thing that we're doing is we've earmarked $2.9 million in ARP funds, and we're going to use that to help subsidize rent, workforce rent, because there's a lot of folks that are working jobs, but they can't afford to pay rent, and they're taking space in our faith-based shelters. So if we can clear them out and give them a hand up and some job training and some assistance with their rent, that clears space in our shelters. We were going to do a non-conjugate shelter. We decided against that. We put $800,000 into a fund, and we are now taking applications from faith-based organizations to help us find ways to eliminate the problem. Now, when it comes to people panhandling, we have to be very careful because, we know we live in a very litigious society, right? You see the commercials, the girl does a backflip and 2 twists and then says, Alexander Muhammad got me $1 million for my devastating spinal injury. And you're like, well, how in the world are you doing backflips? It's a very litigious society. So if we start arresting people, if the sheriff starts arresting people for panhandling, we will be sued by the ACLU and we will lose. But what we have done is we've crafted an ordinance. You cannot be in the streets. You cannot be in the medians panhandling. If so, you can be arrested. And it's such a good ordinance that the city, God bless them, they took it and mimeographed it and changed the words and implemented the same thing. So we're doing that. We've got a number of faith-based organizations that feed the homeless. The thing is, the poor will always be with us. That's biblical, right? So we have to be compassionate. We're a compassionate community. I know sometimes that works against us because the word gets out, right? And then people come here from other places. But I think it's an approach we have to take. Now, final thing that I'll say as I run out of time. Grant Pass versus Oregon, Grant Pass Oregon versus Johnson, Supreme Court case was just decided. Cities can penalize, municipalities can penalize folks for sleeping. That's something we're going to have to contend with because on October 1st, House Bill 1365 becomes active. And we have to start taking care of the folks that are sleeping in the public. If we don't, come January 1st, businesses and individuals can sue the county. So it's something we're planning for. Thankfully, we have Liz Kissel on our staff working very hard. We have a lot of strategies we're implementing, so stay tuned for more of those. But I'm going to be supportive, and the good news is we do have some resources. Also, I would be remiss if I did not say we have our central intake facility too, which Michelle Salzman and Alex Andrade were very instrumental in getting us, and that helps us because a lot of these folks have untreated, undiagnosed mental illness, and they're out in the streets. So at least now we have a place to take them, so they're not taking space in our jail. Thank you.
I was poor growing up. Didn't know it until I was an adult. Never was homeless. But there's places to go that are funded. And we educate them to go there. Nobody is above the law. What I'd like to see is our sheriff's department. They have the funding so they can, anybody that breaks the law, whether it's me or anybody else out in the middle of the road, they have the funding to keep everybody safe. Our children, I've noticed there's big camps right next to our schools. There's something wrong with that. Used to, in the earlier days, only thing we had to worry about was our women, and they lived to tell about it. Nowadays, we have to worry about our boys and our girls, and they might not be here later to talk about it. Fund the sheriff's department so they can, anybody doing anything illegal, they can address that.